the one that's really off code, that you're the one that's not trying to do anything. So I I don't really know what they're talking about. I can't.
Think they gone. You can repair them. Really, honestly, I think they gone. There's no coming back for them. I put that in a jumbotron for you.
Alrighty.
Yeah, but what's that?
I don't really know what they're talking about.
I think they gone. I think you can repair them. Really, honestly, I think they gone. There's no coming back for them. I put that in a jumbotron for you.
Alrighty.
Yeah, but what's sad to me is that she'll still get a large majority of the black vote.
That's because a lot of black people only look at that black skin, but they don't realize all skin folk ain't kin folk.
No, we got to get past that point. We still think that because somebody's black up there, that they have our best interests in heart, and the people really don't. Like I say, they think they party affiliation first and foremost.
We've done that for years. It's time out for that. But we got it, like you said, there's a lot of them still ain't on board.
Go ahead, Ray, and speak.
Now, I just wanted to ask the panel, and I hate to go here, but did y'all see what Uncle Luke said? First of all, at first, I was like, okay, Uncle Luke speaking out of, he said, can anyone name me 5 things that the Democrat Party is done for black people, period? Just specifically for us. He said that. I was just in Uncle Luke's Twitter space. I was speaking to him. But then the brother turned around, I want to say 15 hours later, and was like, hey, we got to get out here and support Stacey Abrams. I was like, didn't you just say that the Democrats ain't did for us, done nothing for us, and you turn around and tell us to vote for Stacey Abrams?
When he said that, I left.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one that saw that. I saw it. He's serious right now?
Yes, I'm like, he's just trying to get his YouTube.
I said, what? I said, wait, hold on, wait a minute. What is going on?
Uncle Luke is hustling backwards.
Not to cut y'all off, but the man of the hour is in with the legendary Judge Joe Brown has made his way in. So let me go ahead and invite him to speak. When he gets a chance, we're going to go ahead and let him chime in too. Definitely appreciate Judge Joe coming in. Like I say, he is definitely a man of courage and integrity, and someone that we can all look up to, and someone that has stood up for black men and called for black men also to be responsible and be protectors of the community, while also, trying to embody something positive as well. So he is definitely somebody that, like I say, who came up the hard way and made it. No excuses. He wasn't going to let white supremacy stop him. He rose to the top, and he doesn't bow and scrape for people. So somebody we can definitely look up to. Judge, I sent you an invite to speak, so whenever you see it, you just go ahead and accept that so you can come on and start speaking. But right now we're just talking about the Juneteenth and talking about Democrats, black Democrats, and we can go ahead and let you chime in here in a second or whatever. But like I said, I sent you the invite to speak. So all you have to do is just accept that, and then you can go ahead and start speaking. Add your two cents in there.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's start with Juneteenth. I've already been to Walmart just to see it, and they do have Juneteen Ice Cream. It's a ridiculous soft little sissy flavor, and it has rainbow colors all over the carton. Yeah. Somebody made a joke earlier today about, I guess it'll take them 2 months before they can get your order together for the stuff, for 2 years. And what that was about is, see, there's a thing about Juneteenth, which is why black folk for generations did not celebrate it except down in Texas. And it's this. At 1863, there was the Emancipation Proclamation. January 1865, the 13th Amendment ending slavery went out. Civil War was won when Lee got defeated April 1865, and Johnson got defeated May 65. A cavalry unit composed of black soldiers from Memphis and Jackson, Tennessee, went to Texas. Spread the word around. The war is over. There's no more slavery. The slaves would not believe the black troops, and they stayed in slavery for another whole year until 1866, 3 years and 4 months after the Emancipation Proclamation, and 2 years and 2 months after the Civil War was over. There are 23 letters that were sent out by the captain of this U.S. Navy vessel. 22 of them have on there 6/1966, 1866, and one of them out of the 23 has 1865. So some people wanted to seize on that to avoid the embarrassment of what took these colored folks so long to decide to be free. And the Union Navy officer had them brought to his attention when one of his subordinates said, "Captain, why are these Negroes letting themselves be beat by whips working down here on this wharf?" That's one hell of a holiday. And what it is this sorry-ass MF in the White House, jackass in chief, racist Jim Crow Joe Biden, is trying to shore up the opportunities for the Democratic Party to pad their ass so they don't get jacked around too badly in the midterm elections. And the rainbow cult still has their surrogates to vote for their cause. That's what this is all about. He has hooked his hat up on, well, let's put it this way, being the person that delivered the rights for that kind of folk. And he hasn't done a damn thing for us. He's always tried to put us in a penitentiary. In fact, I heard personally, it was 1972, I was working with a D.C. think tank, and I was in Dover, Delaware, the capital of Delaware. I was doing research in the state capitol building, a raggedy, ramshackle place that had sagging floors where people used to have bets on how far a marble would roll down toward the center. When I heard this commotion, I went out there. George Wallace was in a wheelchair, if I recall correctly. Faubus, who stood in the doorway of Little Rock High School and said no Negroes were going to be admitted while he was governor. John B. Stennis from Mississippi, etc., and Byrd, former Grand Dragon of the Klan. They were there boasting of this fool who had a dovetail hairdo looking like he was something out of a 1950s movie, who got up and started talking about Negro children were animals and they made schools into zoos, and Negroes were animals who turned the streets into jungles, and he and Stennis were going to put these animals in another kind of zoo where they could be safely observed. He said he understood the Negro because he was raised in Delaware, even though he was from Philly. He talked about Delaware was a bunch of cowards because as slaveholders they didn't have the balls to go with the South because they were so close to Washington, D.C., and he went on at great length with that kind of nonsense. So I had to put up with his crap for years and years practicing law with some of the laws he came up with, not 1994, but 1977, 1979, 1981, 1987, 1991, and then the least bad of the bunch was 1994. And then you had to deal with all of the other things, such as his stand against affirmative action and other stuff all through these years. He's a low-down urban piece of urban trailer park trash. He's dirt. He's been a crook. He and that crackhead son of his and his whole bunch have been ripping off the public, and he ought to be in jail. As a matter of fact, half this crap with the Ukraine is because he is trying to get them to dismiss 120-some count indictment against him and his crackhead son, Hunter. So we're paying the price for that. Now, I don't care whether you think Democrats stink like hell, but you need to turn the bastards out so we do not have them controlling the House and them being totally out of control of the Senate so we can get some sense and few of these things imposed that destroy families, particularly black ones, that deal with providing opportunity instead of promise of nothing to enable safety. And that gets into this thing about gun control again. It's not guns, it's the freaks that are out there, and their policies have been producing more of these freaks instead of doing something about it. They're trying to destroy masculinity. And that is inexcusable because that violates the yin-yang principle in Boys and Girls 101A. We need each other, not to be sit down and lectured about something's wrong with you if you got a swinger and ball. But understanding there is a male-female relationship that healthy humans have to have if they are to prosper instead of trying to destroy it. Now, these folk are sick. They have a bankrupt policy. They don't do a damn thing for us. And I'm sick and tired of listening to us lust over having a clown like Al Sharpton, who either wants to drop to his knees and pray or hold some men's hands on each side of him so he can sing "We Shall Overcome," which is not going to overcome a damn thing. Now, it's time we got progress. It's time that we did for self. It's time we stopped acting on some kind of terror that the master's going to come put us in check. And by the way, I hate that term, white supremacy. White racism, yeah. Supremacy, hell no, because they never have been supreme. They've just been good at pimping everybody else. And pimps are some low-down scumbag jerks. It used to be that on the penitentiary scale, pimps were next to the bottom. The only thing below them were pedophiles, and they sucked more dick than anybody in the pen but the pedophiles. But now we glorify pimps of all types, whether they're from pulpit pimps to their political pimps. So let's get away from that. Don't be scared of white folk. They ain't supreme. They're just some bullshit artists, some of them, not all of them. And by the way, white doesn't mean you got a white complexion. I had the privilege of hearing a live broadcast by Jomo Kenyatta a real long time ago. My old man insisted I listen to it. He said, to halt the revolution in Kenya and to form the Mau Mau upon which we depended for a revolution, we had to kill 10,000 white people. Unfortunately, 9,000 of them had black faces. That's where we are now.
Judge, I wanted to ask you a quick question. What do you make of the Congressional Black Caucus? Most of them are pretty much all Democrats. I think, with the exception of Tim Scott.
Bunch of useless piece of shit. They're surrogates for the LGBTQ cult.
You get no disagreement from me on that.
They didn't elect the scoundrels. We did, but they aren't delivering a damn thing for us. Look up their voting records. You can Google and see what they did for black folk. Absolutely nothing. But they do every damn thing for that rainbow cult. And watch out. You can't put your religion in school if you're a Christian, Jew, or Muslim, or Hindu, or anything else, but they got another religion. It's called the LGBTQ cult. And if you don't believe it, look at this. If you're Jew, you go to synagogue. If you're a Muslim, you go to mosque. If you're Christian, you go to church. If you're Hindu, you go to temple. Buddhist, you go to temple. Zen, you go to temple, etc. But the last few of them don't have a God. They're just systems of philosophy. And that's what you're getting with the LGBTQ cult. It's the official religion of the United States. There are only 2 to 4% of the population that are that way, but the propaganda that's put out by the media makes you think that they are 50% or more. Walt Disney, with their "if you wish upon a star" nonsense, is promised to have 50% of all its children's characters converted or created as that kind of way, which is a recruitment device. They say misery loves company, and you can't tell me somebody isn't miserable if he doesn't have the same driving engines as most normal humans. So, we are what we are. We get born, we get raised, we mature, we court, we screw, we have babies, we raise them, we get old, they grow up, we become grandparents, and the cycle keeps going. They want to break that. They don't like it because they don't understand it, or they don't feel it.
Absolutely, Judge. Your cousin Ray Smith, he has a question. Ray, go ahead and unmute your mic.
What's happening? How you doing?
I'm good, cuz. How you been?
All right, oh man.
I was just going to ask you real quick, are there any politicians or anyone for that matter that you feel we should throw our support behind?
At this point, I can't think of any really. Some of the new people, yeah. This is what most every other ethnic group in the country has come to call a cleansing period. In other words, every SOB in there needs to go because they've screwed up or they're ineffective or their history is bad. Now, you may have somebody you love in your area, go for it, but I would not vote for anybody Democratic, not because the Republicans are going to do anything. It's just so somebody understands the pain of their well running dry. You see, we have this thing where no matter what the Democratic Party does not do for us, we support them, and no matter what the Republican Party does do for us, we don't support them. So just throw your weight to an independent candidate or a Republican, even if you got to hold your nose. So somebody gets the idea, whoa, look at all these valuable voters that are being wasted on fools who don't know what to do with them. Maybe we'll get something. You see, you sell your votes, not for money, but for good governance and benefits. And we aren't getting either of those out of this Democratic Party. They were formed in the second decade of the 19th century to protect and spread slavery to the Louisiana Purchase. 1851, the Republicans were chartered to end slavery. Now, granted, the Republicans got sidetracked with their concern for big business and high finance, but the Democrats got us about 1960 as a result of FDR and Truman ensuring that black folk got a job. And then there was Kennedy. But other than that, you couldn't find a Democratic black person in America. Now you can't find anybody that isn't been anything else but. We don't get owned. Come off the plantation. The damn gates are unlocked. Walk off. Quit responding to these damn dog whistles.
Judge, if you I know you can remember because you're in your 70s and I'm in my early 40s. But growing up, there was a time that it seemed like almost in every black person house, you had a picture of John F. Kennedy in there. But John F. Kennedy really didn't do anything. It was Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah. Well, I know what you're talking about. That wasn't in my household. Screw Kennedy's ass. He didn't do any damn thing except get born of a daddy who was a gangster, a thug, and a rum runner, and somebody that made a lot of money keeping black folk from working on the docks in Boston and performing murders for the Chicago and New York mobs. So I guess that's what happened. A lot of people didn't like Kennedy. He was too young and too fake, and a lot of people couldn't stand his voice. LBJ has an interesting history. He's bad-mouthed. He made no bones of the fact that he behaved as a racist, but what most people don't know is when he was 19 years old, he and some other people formed a school for blacks and Mexicans. And he taught in the school to teach them how to read and write. And a sheriff killed his pet dog, so he got angry and decided to run for office the first time. So he went out and got all of these blacks and Mexicans registered to vote, and then he and his buddies got some pickup trucks and took them to the polls, and he got his first political office. When he became president, he said some people are going to be surprised at what he did. At one point, he tried to do the best damn thing he could to represent his Texas district in the state legislature, and then as a congressman, and then the state of Texas as a U.S. senator. But now he was president, so he was going to represent all of America, and that meant he was going to do some things people didn't expect. Like, for example, that weak-ass civil rights bill that Kennedy had introduced that was useless. Johnson did some interesting things with it. He made it a military bill. He said, whereas the United States is locked in a life or death struggle with the forces of communism and totalitarianism, and whereas the military is our main line of defense against them, and whereas the military has long been integrated, et cetera, and that base commanders cannot ensure that their troops are treated fairly, be it resolved that this civil rights bill is necessary. And that actually had an impact. The other thing is you're kind of determined by your children. And I met two of LBJ's off-the-record children. One of them he had by Marie Brown in 1965. She was his long-term mistress. I talked to her for hours, and she introduced me to her son. He looked just like LBJ. She introduced me to his half-brother, another young man born in 1966 to a black White House secretary who had kind of a coffee color to him, but looked just like LBJ with a deep tan. So when you have your legacy determined by something like that, you have to understand that you have perhaps a different perspective than somebody who doesn't have that variety in the family. Now, that said, let's get away from LBJ, and let me just say my family did not have a picture of that damn Kennedy up anywhere in the house. But some did, a whole lot did.
You normally would see, not to cut you off, but you normally see that picture next to Martin Luther King picture, like you had Martin Luther King and you had John F. Kennedy right next to each other.
Don't forget Jesus.
Oh yeah, Jesus.
Jesus too.
With the bare heart.
That was a trinity right there.
With the bare heart in the middle of the chest. Yeah. Let me say this. We as black folk have to get over this thing where we can't do anything individually. It all has to be through heroes. And most of these heroes don't qualify as a hero. To me, down on your knees praying while a redneck is beating you across the head ain't nothing to be heroic about. You're just getting your ass whipped. And I don't buy that. Now, that said, a lot of you listening have the potential to be heroes and sheroes. We just need to get in the habit of recognizing you so we don't pick the wrong thing. You're not a hero because you score on a three-pointer with 3 seconds left in the game and your team wins by 1. That doesn't make you a hero. You're not a hero because you come up with a rap song that has a platinum return and you get to run around fronting off your money that a Jewish community controls. That doesn't make you a hero. You don't become a shero by flashing your bare behind all over the place twerking. We have to deal with some things that are principles that all humans have had: decency, morality, and ethics. And we have to start talking about raising families in a healthy fashion. We have to start talking about obligations and responsibilities. We live here. If we leave, okay, fine. But as long as we're here, this is home. So take care of your home place and don't let it slide into ruin. And ain't no son of a bitch running me out of Dodge City. I'm putting it that way. I'm too old. But it is what it is. That said, excuse me. I'll pass the baton and I'll sit back and listen.
Go ahead, Ray, and unmute your mic.
I just had two questions. I just wanted to see how, since you are a judge, I wanted to see how you felt about Ketanji Brown Jackson being on the Supreme Court and her not even know how to define what a woman is. The second thing I noticed, where's your blue check? I just noticed, why aren't you verified?
They won't verify me. They refuse. They won't believe it's me. Anyway, that aside, I guess it gives me credibility in not being a pampered poodle. But Ketanji Jackson is useless. I know quite a few sisters who would have been much more qualified and adept at being Supreme Court judges. There is the wife of one of my great friends, now deceased, and mentors, Roger E. Clifton, who's on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals in D.C.'s area. There is Bernice Donald that I mentored down here out of Memphis, Tennessee. She was on the Sixth Circuit. They would have been a lot more qualified, and I bet you damn well they could have defined womanhood, and one of them might have just come up with the simple answer. What could that damn... I just get sickened when people sit in and take advantage of what their betters have done to open the doors for them, and they haven't done a damn thing back. She could have just said, hell, she was a woman. But no, she's trying to front off and be an obvious surrogate, sending signals to that LGBTQ cult for that bunch of trannies that goes around cross-dressing to try to claim they're women even though they got swinging dicks and balls. It doesn't work that way. Women have to pay a whole lot of dues and make some precious to the human race that these fools can't pay. They need to become men and stop shirking. And because you know what it is to not shirk, you deal with duty, honor, obligation, and responsibility. They need to buck it up, step up, get it up, and do what they need to do. You know, that's the Titanic equation. What the hell happens the next time the Titanic sinks and you got one room in the lifeboat for women and children only? Are they supposed to be able to put on a dress front off and say, oh, please let me in the lifeboat? No, get your ass out here and drown with all the rest of the males, and hell, we might as well help the folk in the lifeboat out, throw the asses on the other side of the ship to charm for the sharks so they'll stay over there instead of where the lifeboats are. And don't get me wrong, you can do whatever in the hell you want to do in your own bedrooms to get your freak on, but when it comes to manhood and obligation, I don't play with that. We have to be strong in what we do so we get someplace.
Judge, how do you feel about what's the new White House press secretary? They made a big deal out of Corinne Pierre-John becoming the first black woman and the first openly LGBTQ person in that position.
Hey, excuse me, Judge, real quick. I'm Nicole. So nice to meet you, sir. Hey,
right.
Tyler, they fired her 1 week later. She just got fired, brother.
She just got fired?
You know
Yes,
what
yes,
I
sir. 1 week later, yes.
I know what you're talking about, and I know the circumstances. You know what I have to say about that? Some areas you have to carry these plastic bags and pick up the dog shit when it hits the ground so it doesn't get out there for somebody to step in. That's what I think of it.
Judge, explain to me the love affair that black people seem to have with Biden. I mean, for one, when Biden was running for president, he did tell everybody that you're not black if you don't vote for him. He's also made remarks about black men being predators and putting on condoms and this and that. Yet the black vote still went to him overwhelmingly. So explain to me what it seems to be with black people. I mean, Biden can come into a church with a Klan outfit on, and you still have black people saying, well, you know, he didn't know no better. He was just trying to help out.
Slaves are slaves. I don't care whether it's 2022 or it's 1852. And it looks like colored folk just went back to the natural plantation where they're comfortable. And Massa Biden got him a dog whistle, and all the niggers run, and the ears perked up, tongues hanging out, lolling, and the tails wagging, wanting for bacon bits, and don't know any better.
Would you say that that Biden was worse than Obama, or Obama was worse than Biden?
Biden is trailer park trash. At least Obama had some money. I think the 3-4 worst presidents I can think of are Ronald Reagan, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Biden. And Biden probably is the head of the pack and being the worst. He's also generally incompetent. Bush was about as incompetent. He was a drunk and a drug addict and an opportunistic rich boy clown. And Biden is the same, except he's poor, broke, urban trailer park trash.
You won't get any disagreement with me on that. Like I say, no matter what, he tends to still be able to get the sympathy vote for black people. Now, I heard it right after he got elected, they leaked that video where he was pretty much dressing down all the black leaders in Congress and stuff and telling them that you're going to get in line with the Hispanics, basically, because they're going to be the ones that outnumber everybody, and they're going to be the ones in power. And if you want to get something done, you need to go ahead and go basically join forces with the Hispanic and do their bidding. Now, this was something that they've never told any other. When black people were the majority or minority, they're the biggest minority in this country, they never told Hispanics that, hey, y'all have to get with the black people and you have to join up with them and this and that. But he pretty much, right after he got elected, and black people played a big part in him winning, especially in states like Georgia and South Carolina, then he had to come with the Master Biden speech and start dressing down his flunkies.
That's because he came from slave-holding Delaware, and he knew his niggers. Now, let me give you some breakdown on this Hispanic majority. I've always said that we need to form wise coalitions. Back in the 60s, we called it Third World. Right now, we're getting a game run on us. By the way they assess things, yes, Hispanics will be the largest minority in the country in about 20, 25 years. Right now, a trick's being played on us. If you're non-Hispanic, you're grouped by being white, black, brown, red, yellow, perhaps other. All right? If you're Hispanic, white, black, brown, red, yellow, other are all lumped into one as Hispanic. So when you see the word Hispanic, you have to understand that embraces blonde-haired, blue-eyed Argentines whose grandparents or parents were from Nazi Germany. You have to understand that involves mestizos who are half Indian and half something else, Native American. That involves mulattoes who are part African, part Spanish, and part something else. That embraces white Spaniards from the Iberian Peninsula, that's Spain and Portugal, etc., 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 that embraces Asians, like a stepmother of mine who was Filipino. She's classified, well, until she died, as Hispanic because the Philippines were under the rule of Spain until the U.S. captured them during the Spanish-American War of 1898. So you've got everything from Asians to Native Americans to white folk who are classified as Hispanic. Now, if you broke them down and just put them back in the slots that they'd ordinarily go into, we wouldn't have that majority status, large minority status, rather, that they would be able to embrace, because a lot of them would in fact be Mexicans. But we wouldn't have the number of those who certainly don't look like they're Hispanic but can claim it. Now, see, that's a game you do. If you go buy a gun, first thing on the block of questions is Hispanic, non-Hispanic. And then if you check either one, the next thing it goes to white or Caucasian, black or African American, Pacific Islander / Native American / Amarin, whatever it may be, and you go through this list. You fill out an application for a loan or financing at a bank, you do the same thing. So they are manufacturing a new ethnic group. And the truth. Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm old, man. I talk a lot here, you know.
Hey, that's why we got you on here, so you can drop some knowledge to the masses. So that's why you're on here anyways. We just don't. I mean, everybody came here so they can listen to you do your thing. Goddess, I see you got your hand up, so go ahead and speak.
Hello, Judge. This is FBA Goddess. As you know, I'm fine. We are, as you know, needing a hate bill because we have faced a lot of hate, as we all know. This shooting in Buffalo got Jews a hate bill, which, I mean, I don't know where that came from, but, you know, now this other shooting that has happened, I'm assuming now that Hispanics are going to get a hate bill, and it was 2 white people sprinkled in there, so not sure about that. But as far as Black people, Black Americans getting a hate bill, what do you think about that as far as us and trying to push this? As you see, a lot of us have that as our profile picture, trying to push this so that we can get this hate bill done.
Frankly, I don't want it. Personally. You know why? When you set up hate bills, you have a two-edged sword that 10 years down the pike can cause a lot of damage to us. When you start talking about making free speech illegal, you have a problem. If you commit murder, that's either life in the penitentiary or the death penalty, depending upon the state. So what are you going to do? Put somebody in a gas chamber, put them down and put them to sleep permanently, or fry them in a chair, and you're going to add 5 more years for a hate crime? You see, that's a trap. They're trying to get a hate bill to protect the gay community, but it does nothing for us because, frankly, like my cousin, Brother Smith there, he's been in the Navy. He knows how to fight. I've had some training myself. Probably half the folk listening in here that are men have had some kind of training. We can protect ourselves. Just get the hell out of our way. But when you set up a hate crime, you start turning it around. Because you see, if you can deal with prosecuting somebody for a hate crime against us, look at what they did with the 14th and 15th Amendment. That was passed after the Civil War to deal with setting the former slave on his feet. They didn't use it for that. They used it to protect these newfangled things called corporations. And that hasn't done a damn thing for us. The 15th Amendment has very seldom been applied to black folk, but it gets applied regularly to corporations. They're fictional people created under an act of the state. So that's another example. Well, that's a prime example of how something doesn't help us, even though it's there. The laws are already on the books. All they have to do is enforce. They don't need another cutesy designer law to do a damn thing that would not be done by laws that already exist. Give you an example. I dated a famous singer for a while. Won't mention the name right now. She has a son who's in his 40s. A few years ago, he had got himself a house out in the LA area. It was a nice house. He did not realize he had some LGBTQ neighbors who wanted him to put up a rainbow flag. He refused. So they started walking their dogs to crap on his yard and not picking it up. So he started videoing this to prosecute. So he took a video of them doing this and he yelled out, "What the hell are you doing? Pick up after your damn dog." They got to calling him the N-word. He records it. He called them faggots and said, "Who the hell do you think you are, faggots, having your dog shit on my yard?" So they went and complained. He even had the tape where they were calling them the N-words, like every other thing they said had the N-word on it. You know who wound up getting the 30-day suspended sentence, $250, 250 hours of community service and 1129 probation? The black man who got called the N-word. And see, that's how they'll use the hate crime, because how are they going to defeat that? I know. Everybody calls everybody the N-word. You can read it on Twitter. You my N, it's an N thing. An N got to be a real N. Well, they use it against each other, and it's on television and in the movies all the time. How was I to know that was a hate crime? So I'm just saying, if you want it, be careful what you ask for. You just might get it, and I don't think we would enjoy what we get.
Well, since you put it that way, you're absolutely right. They do flip everything on us and twist it, just like the 13th Amendment. That was flipped, and well, it was set up anyway for our demise, and we weren't never going to get anything in the first place. So that one, of course, was flipped as far as prisons are concerned.
Yes. Well, that one, 13th Amendment, says there shall be no slavery nor involuntary servitude, etc., except upon due process of law as a punishment for a criminal offense. Now, I'll say this. There are some people in the penitentiaries who don't need to be there. And I've been involved in this as a criminal defense lawyer, prosecutor, before that, the public defender for the city of Memphis back in the 70s, and a criminal court judge elected to 2 8-year terms. Let me say this. +97% of all people in the penitentiaries pled guilty, and 84 to 87% confessed. And I would hear people on the streets talk about how they got railroaded, how they put a case on them. And I recall looking at the tape of their confessions. The cops asked them over and over to consider asking for an attorney. And the clown is being OG in my courtroom with his homies out there. Yeah, man, I'm upholding, man, down with the posse. When you see him, snot's running all out of his nose, tears out of his eyes, going through a whole box of Kleenex, and he's doing one of these. Hey, y'all, just let me see my mama. I'll tell you everything. I want to see my mama. Well, sir, you really need to consult with him. I don't want to talk about mama. I tell you, did it was Stomp and Salt Dog here. I tell you, the ones that did it, it wasn't me. And I'd always reveal that when I got out there according to a scene and observed and listened to the tape of the alleged guilty plea. The court will deny the motion to suppress. Let's see, by the court's recollection. Let's see, officers advised the defendant on 9 separate occasions during this interrogation that he should avail himself of the right to an attorney. He was crying profusely, mucus running out of his nose, used up most of a brand new box of Kleenex to wipe his face, and he was begging for his mother, or he wanted his mama, as he put it. And in return for getting to see his mother, he implicated, let's see, you, and you. Take them into custody out in the audience, etc., etc. Now, most of the people that are in doing time did not play Robin Hood, robbing from the rich to give to the poor. They robbed and burglarized their neighbors, sold poison to their neighbors, shot their neighbors, assaulted their neighbors, raped their neighbors, sold poison to their neighbors, etc. And they need to man up and stop being a solution. And when I say a solution, this is an unpublished truth. The American system needs criminality. There are not enough jobs to go around and support everybody at the level of income that they expect. So what they put people in the prisons for is not to get their free labor, but to keep them from laboring in competition with other laborers who have not gotten charged with criminal offenses. And the penitentiaries are warehouses for surplus labor. Certain people in the political realm depend upon the average citizen being scared of walking from his carport to his front door, so they don't think about how they're getting shafted economically, politically, etc., etc. They're worried about being safe from crime. And they do three things when they've got a glut in a commodity, and labor is a commodity just like wheat or corn. When you have a glut, you cut back production of the commodity, subsidize the producer.
Hey, cuz, I think your mic is breaking up.
Okay, we store the surplus in a jail cell. The subsidy is the public assistance check, and the cutting back of production is the ideation that the youth are flooded with, so they drop out, bang out, drug out, get knocked up too early, too often, don't get any vocational skills, no academic foundations. They have the wrong way of looking at the world. They don't carry themselves right. They walk into a place trying to apply for jobs, and they look like somebody that's going to rob it, so they get a call, and then they cause chaos in their community, so the community cannot act politically cohesive in a cohesive fashion and do something about self-help. And they get locked up, and then they're much harder to employ, and they keep going back and forth, and everybody makes money off of them. The money is made on feeding and clothing inmates. One year, I think it was 96, I had the grand jury that I was in charge of for that year check out the books and accounts of all people doing business with the county and the city. The taxpayers for the city had put in the phone lines at the penal institutions in Memphis, of which there are quite a few. And more people are locked up inside Shelby County than in any other county in the United States. And what we found was that at $1.25 to make the initial call and 80 cents a minute for the first 4 months of the year, and then $1.25 per minute thereafter, the company that had bought the concession to operate the pay phones was supposed to pay 4% of the net to the city, which they zeroed out, so the city and county got nothing. And their net profit was $94 million. The next year it was $112 million because it was $1.25 per minute and $1.25 to get to collect call. So that's where the big money is made. Somebody just at the downtown facility at the lockup area for the criminal courts, somebody cleared net $1.25 million just on toilet paper for one of those years. 3.34 million net for cooking oil down at the place that is just for pretrial detainees on the way to court. There's big money to be made. And that's what they count on. So we get chumped off when we get caught up in that game, and we just need to start manning up and doing what men do, making where they live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, accountability, dependability, ethics, morality, and become men and women of peace and public dignity and order who can be brave and courageous when necessary.
Right, Judge. Definitely appreciate you dropping knowledge there, Mr. Engaging. You had your hand up. Before I go ahead and let you unmute your mic, I just want to tell everybody in this space, please go ahead. If you have not already, go ahead and follow Newstoter on Twitter. Newstoter is the #1 Black aggregator, curator of Black news in America today, and we need you guys to help us increase our platform. Also, follow us on YouTube, and I'll go ahead and let Mr. Engage and go ahead and speak. Unmute your mic.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Hi, Judge. It's an honor to be in your presence, as always.
Thank you.
I have one question for you. I just wanted to build upon what FBA Goddess was talking about with the hate crime and stuff, and like more or less the enforcement of that. I find it difficult in the guys that is for that to get done, for them to actually enforce that in our community. What are ways that we can like at least like protect officers that are on code, that are looking out for our community in our best interest per se? What are ways that we can protect those brothers and sisters that are behind enemy lines? I think that that's something that we do need to look into as well.
That's a good idea. Support them. See, we vote, but we don't vote wisely. So who is in charge of the police in your local governmental structure? Make them pay attention to you. The police, by the way, are very good about reflecting political realities. If you count in the political scheme of things, you get treated well by police. If you don't count, you don't get treated like you do. Just keep that in mind. I'm running for mayor of Memphis in 2023, and I have a plan to impose civilian control, not oversight, over the police departments. If you look at the U.S. Pentagon, you see a civilian Secretary of Defense and Subsecretariat over Army, Navy, Air Force, etc., etc., etc. We need that kind of thing. A director of police who is a civilian. You need a sub-director over homicide, uniform patrol, property crimes, burglary, traffic, all of this. So instead of somebody having a barely meaningful oversight committee, you have civilian control. You have a situation where you can set up sub-precincts and involve the good citizens in communications and summoning the police with some communications equipment in their homes. The Jewish communities and places in New York are starting something I've always thought was good. They're setting up community militias to enforce public order. And that's in the Second Amendment. And there's no reason why urban areas could not start up militia units composed of the citizenry. In other words, they're good citizens that live down in the hood. They should be allowed to form militia units and train and be supported by the city or the municipalities so they can get the proper and necessary equipment and start doing things about taking control of their neighborhoods. We have things that we can do. That said, again, I'll pass.
All right, Ms. Engagement, we're going to come back to you. Let's let Shantae, she had her hand up, so let's let her get a question in there.
Hey Josh, how y'all doing? Hey everybody.
How you doing?
I talked to you Sunday. I don't know if you want to remember me, but I just talked to you on Sunday when you was on Dana's show.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you do remember me a little bit.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask you a question. I was talking to a couple of my family members because remember when I told you that my family was in a city called Stovall down in North Carolina? I talked to my family and they said that you were right. And you said that we can go file for reparations because we was affected during the slavery thing. You said everybody can't do it. But you said that my family was a victim to it.
Well, and your family had some particularly, your family isn't typical. Let me just say this.
Mm-hmm.
What you have to do is be able to reach somebody who is not immune.
Immune.
Now,
I need to write that
what
down.
does that mean? See, under American law, if you suffered a personal injury or personal harm, your right to recovery dies with the offender. All right?
Yeah.
Unless the person who is harmed is killed and it becomes a wrongful death act situation. what happens is the immediate kin may have a wrongful death action, but for not anything else. In other words, insult, slap in the face, or stuff like that, it just doesn't go. And it's been 155 years, 157 years since the end of the Civil War. Mm-hmm. And most everybody involved has long been dead. So how do you get an action against something? What I think is the most likely pathway to reparations is an act of Congress.
An act of Congress?
An enablement act and funding act that would allow money to be out there and would provide us with a means of access to the procedural things that are necessary to collect reparations.
How do we start?
Well, elect somebody to Congress who is sensitive to these kind of things so we do not get stuck with the situation we're in right now, mm-hmm. which is nothing. The other contention is that to get a significant amount of money, mm-hmm. the harm that has been done is so absolutely egregious that the country is not likely to put itself in the financial bind that would cause. I did a little estimation, and to get, say, $500,000 for all black folk, which would be reasonable for reparations, that would run up to somewhere around $14 to $15 trillion. And the last year I checked for the income of the United States, it was only $19.4 trillion for 2000, either 17 or 18. So I don't think that's going to happen in terms of a big payout at one time. Mm-hmm. I think that reparations would be great, but so would winning the big lottery. And although I do buy lottery tickets when the kitty gets real high on the off chance of winning, I don't plan my life based on I'll win the lottery.
I understand.
Nice if. So the other thing we might consider that would not require any of the above is to have a legislative act by Congress or state legislatures. They can do it too to make it okay in their particular state, like California may be doing it. And things like affirmative action could be reinstated.
Okay.
Affirmative action did a lot of good. When I got in college at UCLA as a freshman, they didn't have affirmative action. It hadn't been invented. And I didn't get into law school under it, but they developed it, and I know a lot of people that got in under affirmative action, a lot of whom are old and dead now, but they made a big difference in what happened, and you can look at it as a resource which can be used to maximize the fallout to our community. But you see, we lost that. And by the way we lost it was because some colored would-be medical students at the University of California hooked up a game plan with some of the white faculty to engineer a specific reverse discrimination case. Uh-huh. They set it up. These colored folk got into medical school, but they cut off all the rest of the black folk from getting into medical school. And what they wanted to do was, instead of taking this standard that California used to use, which was a competitive assessment, a grade point average, aptitude test, and or otherwise indicated an ability to succeed, and the admission of the student would maximize fallout to his respect or her respective community. That was the standard. They didn't like that because they said that was a political test. So they set it up. So we lost affirmative action with the Bakke case. Now, Congress could do something to set that aside, and I think considering the fact that in terms of long-term earning power, long-term absolute power and ability to control your situation, it would be a good thing for us if we had a restoration of affirmative action. Now, reparations otherwise would require an Enablement and Appropriations Act by Congress or a state legislative body. One point that you have to consider is a thing called sovereign immunity. You cannot sue a sovereign entity like a city, a county, a state, or the United States without that entity's permission. There are certain things where that is implied, but for most of the things it is not. So in order to sue, we might even be able to proceed that way, but somebody's legislative body would have to come up with a waiver of sovereign immunity for the target. But I think considering the big pockets that would have to be involved, you would need something along the lines of an Appropriations and Enablement Act. There is a remote possibility that large churches, like, say, the monstrous Catholic Church, could be hit for their complicity in slavery and what happened, and they might be reachable since they constitute an entity. Also, there's a possibility of going after corporations that were formed before the Civil War and participated in this, since they are fictional people and they enjoy all of the rights of people under the 15th Amendment. But since they are essentially immortal and have not died, if they were around operating at a time when they participated in this and they have continuously operated, they might be reachable. It would take a stretch and some smart young lawyers to do that. Now, those are my thoughts on realistically achieving reparations. The United Nations is not going to get it because the United Nations is a creature of the U.S., the former USSR, now Russia. The People's Republic of China is taken over from what is now Taiwan, the French and the English, and they all have veto power, and nothing can be done by the UN if either one of those entities decides to veto it. So you're not going to get it through the UN because they can't impose it on the United States. We have nukes and ballistic missile submarines in the United States Navy and Air Force, et cetera, and M1 tanks. So that isn't going to happen. But we do have an avenue if we can get a Congress in that would pass a realistic Appropriations and Enablement Act or a state legislative body. And then you come up with the next big hurdle, who gets it?
Right.
And how do you make that determination?
Can I ask you one more question before we hang up?
Sure.
Okay, so everything that you just told me, I wrote it down. It seemed like that's going to be like a long journey and a hurdle to get over, but I think we can kind of get... So basically what you're saying is, like, even with our city politician and our state politicians, because I know a few that's in New Jersey that I wouldn't say close to, but I work for. And I always notice that they always throw us up under the bus just to get ahead of us. And like it seemed like we can't never get nowhere, but they help everybody else and every other group, but won't help us. How do we get them? Like, if we voting for them and we helping them, and then they just exclude us out? What are we doing wrong?
You're forgetting something that every other ethnic group knows. Periodically, you have to clean house. You know, your parent, your mama, grandmama, great-grandmama used to call it spring cleaning. Remember that?
Yeah, still do.
Okay, now, what do you do when you have spring cleaning? You go through the whole house and throw everything out that's dirty, sweep all the dust and dirt out, now vacuum, I guess, mop the floors and all of that kind of stuff. That's what we need to do politically, because right now we are not getting any respect from either political party, but one of them I understand because we haven't supported it, and the other one, even though we have been very loyal to them, we don't get anything.
Yeah.
Now, we have to stop that, and I would suggest the first step is hold your nose, and I don't care who it is, vote against whoever is in power or in office, unless they are exceptionally good in your opinion. Do not go for the trap of the lesser of two evils.
Mm.
And when you do that, you might find you get some respect because a lot of folk get shook up and a lot of people start looking at opportunities. Jesus Christ, Chucky, we need to give these niggers some attention. Hell, they voted against them. Well, we didn't even do nothing for them. What do you think will happen if we do something for these folks? And the other one, Jesus Christ, what we going to do? They voted against them. I'm going to lose my position. I'm counting on all that money. What we going to do?
Why do black people, when I go to like city meetings and town hall meetings and things like that, why do black people always put church into politics? They sit there, they praise the Lord, and then while the white people, I don't care if they Portuguese or whatever, Irish, whatever, they come and they sit on another side and they talk money to them, but when they talk to us, it's always praise the Lord. What's up with that? Like, why when you talk to black people, is church into politics?
Well, here's what you do. You have to understand that the black church was a vital instrument that the slave owners depended upon for the purpose of enslaving black people.
Okay.
When I worked with this DC think tank, one of my more unpleasant responsibilities was researching what they called the slave pamphlets that were on microfilm in the Library of Congress. Over and over again, slave owners and these pamphlets were recommending that the slaves pick a stud to breed to the female slaves to increase their livestock for fun and profit, and also make the slave stud the slave preacher. They said they recommended that the slave owners go to the church services not to hear what the slaves were plotting, but to observe the slave female. If the slave female rolled on the floor in joy and the spirit came on her, they were told that the slave female was going to come into estrus, that is, be fertile, within 2 or 3 days, so they should be sure to have the slave preacher pay them a visit. They were told to approve slave marriages, so the black slave who was married to this woman would go through the indignity of sitting outside his hovel while his preacher was screwing his slave wife, on his pallet where he slept. The black church is vital to the hold that America has had over the black man for the last 160, 170, 180 years.
So it's time to break that, basically.
It's part of our culture. If you're right, ma'am. Every time you go to a meeting, they got all this black churchy stuff going. And the Jews, the Irish, the Italians, the Anglos, everybody, they're talking money.
Mm-hmm. The Hispanics, too. I sat there and I just watched it. That's it, Judge. I ain't going...
And one other thing. Let's talk about Hispanics and the Irish. They donate 2 cents, 3, 4 nickel and some spare change, what's in their pocket in the collection plates. We got to boast about tithing 20% of our income. Some preachers are good, but too many of them are nothing but pulpit pimps, and all they're out is to get rich.
Thank you, Shantae, for your question. We're gonna go to Aunt Lee, and then we're gonna go because she hasn't spoken yet. Then we're gonna go to Mr. Engaging, and then Ray again. Go ahead and unmute your mic.
Hello, how you doing?
Hello.
Hi, how you doing, Judge Ron? I just want you to know I think like you. I love your brain.
Thank you, ma'am.
Everything you say, I'm agreeing. I'm like, yes, we should. We don't want a bill. But I have an important topic and a quick question. I was a probation officer in New Jersey, and I filed a lawsuit for discrimination, harassment, retaliation. against the entire branch of government, against the entire judiciary. They retaliated against me, came after my nephew, went after my witnesses, and I'm just wondering what can I do to get a full investigation? Because if the DAG of the state of New Jersey is representing them in court, I have a federal case, I have 5 criminal cases, but how do I get an independent investigation against them or possibly RICO charges?
Well, I'm not in the business of giving legal advice. I haven't practiced law for 30-some years, more than 30 years, other than a transitory thing where I defended some woman that a local juvenile court was doing wrong and got myself 5 days in jail for it. But let me say this. This is one of the reasons that politics is so important, is because the people that control such things are, for the most part, either elected or they are appointed by people that are elected and that you can vote for. I would raise holy hell. I would use Twitter to continuously put the word out about your situation, to spread it. Get used to tagging people. You know how to do that?
Kinda. This is my first day on this.
In other words, tweet something and then hit that thing down there to retweet. And when you retweet it, you go down a little bit lower and it says quote. Now, when you hit the quote, what you do is you put @ and you put all of the people in there and you get 280 strokes to put in @ everybody that's got a large audience, and it automatically goes to their site. And that way you will expand the people that hear your message about the discrimination that's been done against you. Now, we talk about Joe Biden in terms of his wrong with the criminal acts and what that's done to increase the prison population. But you cannot let him escape responsibility for going along with the Reagan administration on destroying the effectiveness of Title 7. That's equal opportunity employment. Equal employment opportunity. That's what you're suffering in. I used to work for them 50 years ago. And back then, trust me, the feds made out case after case that brought justice for the citizenry. But St. Ron, the ray gun, starting in 1988 with Clarence Thomas, who is the 29-year-old director of EEOC that he appointed, was supposed to kill it off, and they've done too good a job. But now I would say get yourself an appropriate, energetic, young lawyer who's smart and has balls. Now, she can be a female if she's got balls too, figuratively, who does not mind slaying giants. See, too many of our young black lawyers talk about it's just about money rather than principle. And they talk about, well, that's too powerful. But see, that's how the great lawyers got made. They took on the most powerful people they could and won or put on a good show. And that's what you need to find. They're few and far between because too many of our young black lawyers are cowards. By the way, you do not want somebody that's in the business of settling stuff. You want to know who's tried how many cases. Now, I won't mention the name, but there's somebody that seems to get hired by the families of everybody black that gets done wrong. And he settles these cases for ridiculously low amounts because he's never been to trial, and the people that he's supposedly suing and say, all right, let's go to trial, see what you know. But now there's a gentleman, Willie Gary, in Boca Raton, Florida. And Willie Gary's 74 years old, and he holds a record for the largest jury verdict in American history. That was back in 1984 when it was affirmed by the appellate courts, and at that time it was for $780 million. He holds the 4th, 5th, 7th, and 8th largest jury verdicts in American history, and the 2nd, 4th, 5th, and 8th largest settlements in American history. And that's who you ought to be going to, somebody like that, for some of these problems that we're having these days, and some of the crew that he can still put together. His name is Willie Gary. I don't know if he's still practicing much. I know last time I heard he was in semi-retirement. You see, you need people like that. There are some black lawyers who have been in the trenches, who have tried hundreds of jury cases, yet nobody pays attention to them, and they run to somebody that hasn't done any trials. I won't mention any names, but let's just take an example. Somebody was notoriously killed not long ago. The city had a liability policy of $250 million, and this person settled for $28 million, of which he got 50%, and the family split the $14 million less the expenses, which left them with about 10 or 12. That was quick money for him, but it was taking a dive on the clients because it should have gone to trial and made a national point. But you see, we need to start encouraging our children to go to law school so they will learn the things that they need to learn to take care of the legal aspects. Cities need to start putting in place arbitration tribunals. I don't know if it would apply to your situation, though the Supreme Court of the United States has held that anything can be arbitrated if it's by contract. And we need to start allowing citizenry to get back into the courts to resolve disputes so that we don't have so much insane violence because there are unresolved disputes. But on the other hand, most people today can't afford the insane attorney fees that are charged, which I think are frankly ridiculous. And there are too many damn lawyers charging fees that are amounting to too much. There are not that many that are anywhere near.
And just as you said, Judge, because I live here in Florida, and Willie Garrity, he's a monster. Like he didn't take no crap. When somebody was really looking for a major big time lawyer, his name was the first one to come popping up.
Well, he still practices, semi-retired.
Also, Lee, I'm sorry. Also, I know you were supposed to send me that article. Did you ever get it complete? I haven't checked my email, but did you send it like already fully completed? And I'll go ahead and I'll upload it on Newstoter. Whenever you get the article ready, just let me know, and I'll go ahead and I'll upload it. Like Miss Copeland could tell you, and I'll go ahead and I'll tweet it out for you. So whenever you're ready, whenever you have it fully completed and ready, like we spoke the other night, just go ahead and let me know, and I'll go ahead and tweet it out to the followers and whatnot. And everybody in this space, if you see it, be nice enough and kind enough to go ahead and retweet it so she can get the attention that she deserves, and that'll really help move things along for her. I believe our next speaker, but before we go ahead and I go ahead and let you get it, Mr. Engaging, like I say, everybody that's in the space, go ahead and please follow after this space here. Go ahead and follow Newstoter. Judge Joe Brown follows Newstoter. So if Judge Joe Brown can follow Newstoter, you can follow as well.
Follow Newstoter. Follow it. It's good stuff.
Thank you. Black owned, black managed, black content that we produce, that we try to give other black media outlets a voice. So we're trying to do our thing. And if any of you guys that can afford, go ahead and Cash App us $1, just $1 in Cash App. And that's $sign Newstoter. Just $1 if you can afford it. If you can't, we understand. But $1 Newstoter. Just $1 cash sign Newstoter. Go ahead, Mr. Engaging. Take your mic off of mute. Mr. Engaging, you still there?
Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that. My computer on my phone jammed up. Judge Joe Brown, we got a lot of black people in our community talking about ICE. We got some of us that want to join ICE because we see how the black community is disadvantaged when it comes to immigration. What are ways that we can put the pressure on our local politician to get like a fast track for black men and black women to get into these type of roles in the criminal justice field?
Okay, let me say this. Have you ever played a sport in high school or college?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay. Could you fast track that?
Depending on the skills of the individual, like in the guise of if you have the person have the skills and the talent to measure up, then yeah, they should be fast tracked or they should be elevated to fulfill those roles because it's a need in our society. So like that's what I mean by fast track. We have a lot of talented Black folks that could be in those positions, and they do need to be recruited in a certain way. They do need to be approached in a certain way so that they can fulfill those ranks. You get where I'm going at?
I get exactly where you're going at, and having dealt with that for years and years, decades, that used to be what they did with veterans. Veterans got fast-tracked in certain positions because they'd already been through somebody's boot camp, which was an initial rite of passage into becoming a member of an organization. They already knew how to follow orders, what that was about, why and wherefore as a command structure. They had demonstrated an ability with firearms and at least qualified. They had demonstrated physical fitness. If you can find such people, say veterans, or those who are already police, yes, you can fast track into ICE. All right? It's not a bad thing. I'll give you some locations where you can go look. I did a few years ago, along with my crew, a recruitment thing for the Miami Police Department. They've got some problems down there that resulted in a number of Black cops way out of proportion to their numbers in the general population. And they had this problem. They had 300 funded but unfilled positions for police. So we did some video stuff for them that was put on DVDs and passed out to vets who were coming out of the armed services after several tours over in the sand pile. So you might check around and find if there are any local police agencies. I just had a good, well, he was a godson of mine, and he went through joining a police force in one of the smaller rural areas down here in Arkansas, but now he's up in the D.C. area after just a year there as a fast track to get into these kind of things. These are just suggestions. I think that it would not hurt for some administrative regulations to be put out or put in place. And by the way, Jackass and Chief Biden could do that with an executive order when it came to ICE, which he seems to have no interest in doing. But such things as that could happen. So yes, I don't have any problems with fast-tracking something if the person who's trying to get fast-tracked has demonstrated the acumen, talent, aptitude, and ability to fulfill such a position.
Yeah, I see a lot of our Black veterans on the street, respectfully, and stuff like that. And I look at those are roles that my brothers and sisters could actively engage in and protect our neighborhoods from certain threats that are brought in and also afar. Like, we need to really take more of a conscious effort into that, into those roles, and actually have a police force that we are backing, or have a police institution that we are backing that can support us, even if it's like a Freedom-style police force or something of that effect. That's the reason why I'm just throwing those ideas out there to you, Judge Joe Brown. And I want to say thank you for your time, sir.
I like that. One other thing I'm proposing, too, when I'm running on this mayor's thing here in Memphis, is setting up community militias, using the ex-veterans, retired cops, and citizens with clean records who are willing to go through a psychological profiling or test, background check, and who are proficient with arms and are willing to take the training. So we have community militia to back up the police to enforce public peace, dignity, and order where we live. That's the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the common defense.
Yeah, Judge, I noticed that they hold positions like security is like a very covenant position within the criminal justice industry. like where I live at in the state of Connecticut, you have to become either a police officer, a CO, or something to that effect to manage people with firearms and safety of that such. What are ways that they can actually deregulate it a little bit? Where, like, if it's a person that was in security for 10 plus years will qualify just as much as, not qualify just as much, but have a standing that's measurable in other regards, because it's like almost like a blue wall where they lock out black folks.
They do, but I'll tell you what. Saturday, look up Officer Stan Mason, and his show is Behind the Blue Curtain, and call in with him and ask him. He's retired after 25 years as a cop down in Waco, Texas. And he put his life on the line a lot of times to speak out against police wrongdoing, but he can give you some help with that. He's on Saturdays, every Saturday, and he takes a lot of calls.
What was that good brother's name again?
Stan, S-T-A-N, Mason, M-A-S-O-N. And the program is known as Behind the Blue Curtain.
Thank you, sir. I had my pen and I was jotting all that. Yes, sir. I jotted that down.
One other thing is an idea that comes to me. I don't see why the feds don't allow what they would call ICE reserves. Some of the white guys down in Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico cooperate officially and unofficially with ICE to set up citizen posse comitatus patrols. Now, there would be an easy way to set up a reserve component for ICE so that if you get through the reserves, like you do with certain police departments, you have a clear pathway to becoming a regular officer. That might be something you could look at. Just an idea.
Thank you, sir, for your time and your understanding about what I was getting at with a lot of those questions. I'm going to definitely make some good use of it.
Thank you for them being astute.
Yes, sir. I went to school in criminal justice, so I want to make sure I exercise it for my people the best way possible.
There you go. It helps to be prepared.
Hey, Judge, this is DJ Sag One. Hey, we're getting some questions. How can we donate to your mayoral campaign?
All right. The campaign is for November. The election is November 2023. So right now in this county, there is an election that's coming up this August for 2022. And there are going to be 450 people on the ballot, so now is not right time. We have appointed a treasurer, but we are not collecting, but I'll let you know. I'm on Judge Joe Brown TV, and I do not have a blue check. All right? By the way, one other thing, too. Summer's coming up, and I'm in the business of providing service, but I also sell sauce. You might want to check out Judge Joe Brown Barbecue. Judge Joe Brown, JJB, barbecue, bbq.com. Go there and order some. It's really pretty good stuff. We submitted the sauce, and just about every damn judge at this barbecue contest came over wanting to know how to get it. We weren't trying to really win anything about the completed barbecue, but the sauce did pretty damn well, so try it out. Also, if you like Bloody Marys, you can have a hot Mary or a Southern Mary, and what you do is you take the barbecue sauce, add a little water, ice cubes, a good dose of vodka, and add some celery, and you have a good stand-in for a Bloody Mary that frankly tastes better. But anyway, it's good on chicken, turkey, duck, goose, lamb, goat, pig, and cow. It's also good on fish, and we have powder, seasoning, hot and regular sauce. And we have chicken links, raw and smoked, and we have them hot. They're delicious, and they're prepared by the only black meat packing plant in California that is USDA certified. So check it out.
So, Judge, you a regular entrepreneur there.
.com. Well, you know, old man's got to have something to do to occupy his time. And I'm semi-retired. I only work 35, 40 hours a week. We used to work 60. But, you know, it is what it is. And by the way, I didn't come by that show until I was in my 50s. So I did have an honest day job for most of my life.
I know when I had spoke to you a couple weeks ago and I was trying to get you on the Twitter space, you was in Memphis then doing a barbecue thing, I believe, barbecue event.
Yes, I was.
Okay. Well, I heard Memphis is supposed to have some of the best barbecue in the country, so.
It's good. Kansas City has good Q. Memphis has good Q. Dallas and Houston have good Q. Oh, there's a place or two you can find in Arkansas. You used to get some pretty good Q in L.A. at Leo's Barbecue down on Crenshaw near Adams. It's changed hands a bunch of times, but it's still open. There's good Q. There was a place in Kansas City that used to have a phrase, you don't need no teeth to eat my beef. So Kansas City is known for its barbecue as well.
I want to thank you guys who have contributed on Cash App tonight. Rena Carpenter, Eugene Rames, Judah, Deborah Jenkins, and Eleanor Butler. I appreciate it from all you guys. Thank you so much for your kindness. Also, Ray, go ahead and unmute your mic.
No, I was just going to say really quick, obviously I'm a little biased, but I have had the barbecue sauce, and I want to let everyone know that I personally think it was very good. And I wanted to ask, because with all these mass shootings, what would he suggest for solutions? Because I'm of the mindset, if I know that these people aren't going to stop, the only thing that makes sense is to arm ourselves and to have people in positions where if they decide to start shooting, these people can be taken down.
I agree, sir. I agree with you 100%. The same reasons that we have a U.S. Department of Defense are the same reasons that if we can do these things against the collective, we ought to be able to defend ourselves by doing them against individuals. And the point comes down to this. I don't care how many guns you take away from people, there's one thing that you need to consider. Timothy McVeigh. You know how he blew up the courthouse in Oklahoma City, which got the biggest bag outside of 911 in this country? He used not even $250. He used $100 worth of ammonium nitrate fertilizer, which is the most common fertilizer in America. You can buy it at Lowe's, Best, any hardware store, your lawn and garden store, Target, Walmart. And ammonium nitrate is the same explosive that the military uses in 155 millimeter cannon shells. It's a long pulse explosive. When the sheriff's department around here wants to blow something up, they go down the street to the lawn and garden store and they buy a 25-pound bag of the fertilizer, and it takes stuff down. That's what Timothy McVeigh used to blow up the courthouse in Oklahoma City. It's freely available. How to make an explosive out of it is all over the net online. Started off with something from back in the 60s called the Anarchist Cookbook. And what are you going to do? You just give them another alternative. You know, the military has this thing because, what do they say? Bullets kill a lot of people, but only explosives kill enough. So when somebody has a readily available explosive that he doesn't have to do anything but go down to the lawn and garden shop and buy, how are you going to stop a fiend from doing something? And what they have to do is train these boys to have manhood instead of trying to say we have to get rid of toxic masculinity, because it's a misnomer. What they're really talking about is a lack of manhood. And when you talk about a lack of manhood, you talk about no respect, no fight fair, go kill some kids, go kill some women, go kill anything you can kill because you hate yourself and you want to die. And we don't just deal with that manifestation of craziness and lack of masculinity in the hallways of schools. We deal with it in our own hoods. Because half these gangbanging fools, these hood rats, they lack manhood too because there were no daddies in the home to teach them. So they go around and jeopardize the women and children and the old folk to being slain with stray bullets and everything else. So we've got to stop that. That's unmanly.
You made a good point there, Judge, because I can remember growing up, like, now my mom, she gave all the ass whoopers in the house, but all she had to do was say, well, I'm going to tell your daddy, and then you freeze up like a deer in headlights. Like,
yeah.
My dad whooped my ass one time that I can remember when I was 5 or 6 for hitting one of my cousins. But all she had to do was say, I'm going to tell your daddy. And that was enough to just make me just freeze up there. I couldn't do nothing when she said, I'm going to tell your daddy. That was it.
There it is.
BA, you're next. Go ahead and unmute your mic.
Did you call me, Creative?
I saw BA. I didn't see the whole name, but yeah, BA Creative. You go ahead.
Okay, awesome. This is actually Great King Black State. My main account is still under suspension. I got a couple hours to go, but I do have a question for Judge Joe. So I want to paint a scenario where you are the governor of Tennessee. You have a 60% black majority voting population. You have a state militia. You have a state-based intelligence agency. You control all of the police, the judges, the legislator in that state. How can the federal government or how could the federal government effectively punish you and or cause you problems if you had full control over that state?
They wouldn't be able to cause you a certain kind of problem, but they could harass you by continually attempting to prosecute you. Thanks to Joe Biden and Stennis, we have a series of laws on the books that are used in federal prosecutions that specifically allow what are known as harassment prosecutions. In other words, the U.S. attorneys in a given district are not only permitted, but encouraged to bring prosecutions they know they can't win with the specific objective of bankrupting or harassing the targets until they get neutralized. Now, that's what they would probably try to do, and they have done it from time to time. There was a Louisiana governor that they attempted to go after, and they did not get him until he had retired, and then they got him for tax evasion. He was famous for saying, the only way they will be able to defeat me is to catch me in bed with a live boy or a dead woman. Because they know what I do, but they also know I deliver them good government. That's what that governor said. I met him one time at a hunting lodge. It's a very interesting character.
Okay, so outside of them going directly after the governor, would they have any option against the state? In other words, you got the 60% plus majority, and so when this governor falls, another one will step up to take his place. Is the state safe from the federal government as a black majority?
Yes. They got to resolve that. They didn't want to make it too bad. Remember, we had the Civil War. That, by the way, is the bloodiest conflict that this country's ever been involved in. The death toll for the Civil War exceeds the death toll for all of the other wars we've been involved in, and that includes World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, and what's going on over here in the sand pile. During the Civil War, they had some battles where the death toll over 48 hours was greater than the entire death toll for the last 22 years in the Middle East. So it is what it is. And remember, it's a union of sovereign states. The United States, that's like the United, well, it's like the Euro Union. Actually, some of the American states are as big as some of the European nations. So the United States government repressing a state is not in the cards except one way. Now, as an adult, I have participated in 5 census collections. This last one was the only one where I was not asked if I was a citizen. Why is that important? Because the census, according to Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution, is to be conducted every 10 years for the primary purpose of apportioning representatives in the House of Representatives. What they are attempting to do is get everybody counted in the census, so places like California, New York, and Illinois will have people counted toward the number of representatives that those states are entitled to that cannot vote. So people would be in place to carry out somebody else's agenda, and I leave your imagination open as to whose. See, California stands after this census to lose 2 congressmen, and so does New York, and perhaps 1 in Illinois. The final numbers aren't yet in. And that's why this big fuss was in there, where for the first time in my 70-some years, they have never had a questionnaire about your citizenship. So we need to keep these things into consideration. They're tricks. Now that could be a way that you could harass a state by overwhelming it in the U.S. House of Representatives with those people who would vote against that state's interest because the states they represented had a disproportionate influence relative to their vote-eligible population. Now, this clown that they confirmed for a non-existent Supreme Court position said she'd never heard of anything about efforts to have illegals vote, yet New York, which is in the Second Circuit for the appellate courts of the United States, has in fact put in place some statutory regulations that would allow non-citizens to vote in local and perhaps state elections. But she didn't even know about that, which is just absolutely crazy. But see, that's a move afoot to diffuse the anticipated loss of black support for the Democratic Party. So we need to be aware of these things. Again, I've pontificated long enough. I passed. I hope I answered your question, sir.
Okay, the next order of questions are going to go, because we're going to try to get the people that haven't asked a question. So that'll be Miss Copeland, that'll be Just Eve, that'll be then the Free Party, and then Aunt Lee, you can come back again. So let's go with Miss Copeland and let her get a question in here. And also, before you start, Miss Copeland, I want to thank those who have continued to do the Cash App. Thank you to Trey Edwards, to Dirty Jersey Productions, Kirky Kirk, and Danya. Thank you guys all so much. We appreciate that. And Miss Copeland, you go ahead and unmute your mic.
Hi, family. How everybody? Hi, Brother Toad.
What's going on?
Hi, Brother DJ. Hi, Brother Ray. Hi, Dr. Deborah. And most of all, it's a pleasure talking to you, Judge Brown.
Yes, ma'am.
I am the president and founder of NAFTA. It's a long name, but it's a 501c4, and it's a political organization dedicated to protecting Black families. I wanted to ask you what you thought about the state of the child welfare system and the fact that we are being decimated. 1 in 10 Black children are being removed, and 50% of our children are experiencing at least one CPS investigation during their childhood. I propose specific legislation for Black people, similar to what the Native Americans had. What do you think about that? What do you have to say?
Well, the Native Americans get specific legislation because they live in treaty-recognized areas, and treaties are part of the supreme law of the land and enforceable by all state courts and judges. Now, as far as us, we don't have any such locales, so you run into a reverse discrimination thing or an equal protection thing if you start coming up with laws like that for the benefit of a specific number of people or a type of people, a group of people where others are excluded. One thing I might suggest that I found workable when I was on the criminal bench is to use various avenues to get to the parent of that usually holds sway in these homes and getting them into how to get things done. We need some parenting skills classes. People just don't know how to be proper parents now, and we've got situations where the family in question hasn't had anybody really capable of it for 3, 4, and 5 generations. And the 5th generation ancestor is still around in good health. We have to do something about that. But you have an idea that might convince somebody's legislative body just to come up with some remedial action that isn't necessarily denoted as Black only or specifically for us, because I don't think those who represent so-called Hispanics or whites or Asians would be too happy about it. But it's worth a try. It depends upon your political climate where you live.
All I can do is try.
There you go. And that's another reason in this election, midterm election, set to do some spring cleaning or summer cleaning or whatever the case may be, fall cleaning, and get rid of some of these clowns who might be opposed.
Thank you for answering my question. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Definitely, thank you. You always come through and you always ask intelligent questions, Ms. Copeland. So, we definitely love having you on the space.
Thank you, Ms. Copeland.
The next person is Jess Eve. Go ahead and unmute your mic.
B1 to the room, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Judge, for allowing me to ask you a question. The focus of the room, so I hope I'm not repeating anything anybody's already said. I know you guys have been going for a minute, but it says Juneteenth and the Democrats. And earlier today, our president said, he tweeted that he was going to take executive action and sign an executive order regarding, he said that delivers the most significant police reform in decades. So, Judge, my question for you is, why can't we get reparations executive ordered for Juneteenth? I think that would be an excellent way for us to celebrate.
He has no power to do that. He doesn't have any money he can appropriate. The Constitution of the United States says that's the job of Congress, not the president. He's only the administrator. And if there is funding available already earmarked for some general purpose, if he has been granted under the law in question the authority to use his discretion in its dispensation, yes, but there's nothing out there of any significant sum that would be available for reparations. So there is no order he could sign that would be meaningful and not in violation of his legal authority. It would have to be an Enablement and Appropriations Act by Congress. We talked earlier, apparently before you came in, ma'am, about this thing called sovereign immunity. You cannot sue a sovereign entity like a municipality, a state, a county of the United States without that entity's permission, or without the courts of that entity having established that under the inferences of their law this is permitted. Our problem with getting reparations is that a wrong done to an individual is personal, and when that individual dies, his claim, unless it's a wrongful death one, evaporates. The person who did the wrong, when they die, the remedy against them evaporates. I suggested that perhaps, since they are classified under the 15th Amendment as persons, legal persons, though fictional ones, long-standing corporations that were around at the time, may, with appropriate contrivance by smart lawyers, be subject to the jurisdiction of some court or courts for tortious or wrong action against our people. Perhaps entities like long-standing religious institutions like the Catholic Church would be subject to proceeding against. Maybe. But it would take some doing. So other than that, we need an Appropriations and Enablement Act by Congress or a state legislature. Now, California has been making noises like they're going to do that for a group of people, the extent of which they have not yet determined. If that makes sense.
Thank you. I appreciate your response.
Okay.
And thank you for your question. Our next person is going to be the Freedmen Party. So go ahead and unmute your mic.
Hey, thank you, Newstoter. Thank you, DJ. Thank you, Judge Joe Brown, for being here. I'm 27. My name is Eric from the Freedmen Party. I grew up watching a lot of your shows, so it's cool to talk to you. We founded the party this year in 2022 and in January. And so one of the things we're focused on is not tying ourselves to either the Democrats or the Republicans, but being able to bring up our policy, have a block vote, and then vote on different candidates, endorse different candidates, regardless of their party affiliation. And one of the things we looked at once we looked at the FEC regulation, they have this designation called a major party, which is what the Democrats and the Republicans are. They basically get 25% or more. And then if you're a minor party, you get more than 5%. And right now, if you're a major party, you get $100 million per election. So both the Dems and the GOP get $100 million. In minor parties, no political party has yet to achieve that designation, but all you need is 5% of the popular vote in a general election, national election. And so we kind of see that as a North Star as we grow. Right now, we're focusing on 2022 on the local and state level, running candidates for Congress and like mayor and things like that, legislator in the California Assembly, like Camilla Moore. But my main question I have with you is, are you able on Juneteenth, because we're having our first national convention, in order to become a national party, you need to have a national HQ, a national convention, and you need to run candidates. And so the only thing we haven't done yet is have national convention, which we're going to have our first one on Juneteenth. And we would love to have you there. We're having special guests like Sandy Darity and Sinclair Skinner. We're going to have Marcel Dixon and Tamara Shealy and Reverend Somerville. They're all running for Congress. And then if we had you could speak on your specialty as well. and even DJ Newstoter, we could have a new Black media panel where we bring, the Black media together and have a panel on that. So I just want to open that invitation to both of you.
Okay, if you contact the individuals who put this on, they can hook you up with me. And I just wish you hadn't done it on Juneteenth, which is, wow. Anyway.
It's on Father's Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is Father's Day this year, but it's virtual. It's virtual, so you don't need to...
Oh, I got it. I got it. That's not my objection to Juneteenth. I mentioned it earlier. There were 23 letters sent out by the captain of the U.S. Naval warship dated June 19, 1866. One of them was dated June 19, 1865 by mistake. They were all copies. And it was involving a notice to the colored in Texas that they'd been free since the 1863 Emancipation Proclamation 3.5 years before. That the Civil War had been over in April 1865, a year and 2 months before, and that they were a little behind the times and they didn't need to submit to the lash as slaves anymore. So I'm a little offended that after some black soldiers, actually cavalrymen from Memphis and Jackson, Tennessee, went down there in May 1865 and told the Negroes they were free, but they didn't believe their black brothers, so they stayed slaves for a year and a month, 13 more months before they believed some white folk who told them. So that being the question that is unanswered in terms of history of the question is, why should we celebrate us staying slaves for a year plus after there was no longer slavery in the United States? That's the problem I have with it.
You said May what, 1865?
What happened was some black troops in May 1865 from Jackson, Tennessee and Memphis, Tennessee, they were in the cavalry. They went down to Texas and rode all through the state to tell these colored slaves that they were no longer slaves, the Civil War was over. The Negroes would not believe the black troops, and they remained slaves for another year and a month. They did not...
We got to learn that. Whatever that May date is, we got to make that the next convention date.
Yeah. Okay. See, what happens is Lee surrendered at the Appomattox Courthouse to General Grant in April 1865. The 13th Amendment had gone out in January 1865. And then in May 1865, General Johnson surrendered the last Confederate field army to General William Tecumseh Sherman, who, by the way, had signed an act January 16th, 1865, ordering that 40 acres of confiscated rebel land and one army mule be awarded to every black family that his army had freed from slavery. That was reparations. However, Democratic President Johnson from Tennessee, who succeeded Lincoln as President of the United States, signed the Commander-in-Chief order, since the South was still part of a military district at that time, that rescinded that order, and he didn't want his Johnny Reb buddies getting their properties taken away. So we had restitution, 40 acres and a mule at one point, but got snatched.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Garrison Frazier and what he talked about, having our own colonies where, the racism from white people we could be away from and just build ourselves up. I think Special Field Order 15 is super important to go back to.
Well, yeah, that kind of works, but I don't particularly like leaving some of the conveniences I've become used to behind, and some of the political connections and the power fonts that I have access to go live in some third world area. They're not going to give us a nation area here, national area here, and if we have it, who do we defend it with? What do we defend it with? And how many people are we going to have to put on a wall and shoot to get rid of? So it could get to be a little messy.
No, I meant more in the terms of how he talked about we have our own land, like in the special field order they mentioned training, like you said, the militia, and we have our own trained militias that defend our own 40 acres, and then we have it in a kind of, shared territories where we're together.
Where would we have this battle?
There's enough. If you take the population of freedmen in the United States and you take both public land alone, or you take private land, or in combination, there's enough acres for each freedman to be given in our distribution, like Field Order 15 intended.
Well, the question gets down to this: whose land are we going to take? And who's going to stand still while we get awarded a state? Up in southern Washington and northern Oregon, the white supremacist type up there, I hate to use that word, are trying to get a white or Caucasian state given to them. Might be an interesting challenge to see who gets it first, if anybody. I suspect nobody will. And the only way to have territory is to conquer it. Now, but we got some adjustment to make. We're too much into bling rather than bang. You get what I'm saying? We like to practice our free throws and layups for basketball. We're never going to get a dime playing. We spend too much time jumping up and down in front of the TV set watching NFL or MLB or watching Housewives or, selling Sunset, Pose, Empire, and stupid crap like that. We don't pay attention to business. We don't go out and spend money on ammunition and firearms and spending hours at the range learning how to shoot. We don't practice the warrior skills. We need to start doing that because I think it's going to be necessary in the next 3 decades when things get tense with global warming, food shortages, land shortages, and a drastically increased population that's going to crowd the devil out of things. I would suggest young people also, if you have the opportunity academically, to take up Mandarin Chinese and also Russian. I suspect you would have some use for it.
Thank you, Judge.
All right.
Thank you, Freeman Party. Ray, you go ahead and ask your question to the judge, and then I'm going to ask him a couple questions. We're going to close it out because I'm sure Judge Joe has probably a big day planned for him tomorrow, so we don't want to keep him on here too late. So Ray, go ahead.
I still have to eat dinner for the day, and what I got brought over to me is staring me in the face, but I don't want to be rude to start eating it, so I guess I can warm it up. We do have microwaves.
We're not going to keep it. We definitely ain't going to keep you much longer, Judge. We're going to have you up out of here, like I say, so you can go ahead and do your thing. And I do definitely appreciate you stopping by. Ray, go ahead and unmute your mic.
All right. I don't necessarily have a question. I didn't feel like it would be appropriate for me to just leave being family, just to leave without saying something. I just wanted to definitely tell him thank you for everything he's done, for coming to this space. And I'll talk to you I got to talk to you later because I got to get up at 2:30 in the morning to get ready for some fires.
Well, I tell you what, your other cousin that just got out of the Navy, he's working up there with the Joint Chiefs at the Pentagon. He's trying to find you, so he has your number. He just miscommunicating. So anyway, yeah.
Okay, if he needs to get in contact with me, you have my number. You can send it to him. I'll make sure I answer
your number. He just hadn't had a chance to do the call, and he went through a divorce last year. first part of this one. So he finally got it. He's fighting up there for child custody and all that kind of crazy mess. But it is what it is. So I'll get him in touch with you. Thank you for showing up, family.
No problem.
Thank
like
you.
always.
Thank you, Ray, for everything, man. Thank you for hooking this up, and thank you for always coming through the spaces, man. Always supporting, always bringing great conversation and great ideas and great topics to the space. So I really appreciate it, man. Thank you again.
No problem, man. I appreciate you giving me the platform. Good night, family.
Good night, man.
Good night, cuz.
All right. Hosting the guest, Joe Brown. Thank y'all.
Lie, I'm gonna go ahead and let you, Lee. I'm gonna let you ask one more question, and then, like I said, we're gonna let the judge get ready to go. I'm gonna ask him one follow-up question after this. So let's go ahead and let's keep this like 2 minutes.
All right.
Okay, it's not even going to be 2 minutes. I just want to say thank you, Judge, for taking the time out to talk with me and speak with me. Thank you for being you. You're appreciated. I love you. You're my cousin now, just so you know. Hey, Cousin Joe. And I thank you, and I appreciate it.
I'll take that. Thank you, ma'am, for calling.
Judge, I want to ask you one question before we wrap up tonight. I know we got a few people still want to ask, but this is going to be the last one. This is just This is just an opinion question. But how do you feel about Kamala Harris, Jim Clyburn, and term limits for the Congress people?
Let me start with the last. I found that although I thought I supported term limits, the more I get exposed to it, the more I'm discovering that the candidate or the office holder limits out just when he learns what the hell he's supposed to be doing in the office for the most part. Let's just go vote and vote the people we don't like out. That's for certain offices. Kamala Harris is a grinning hyena, and I think is an embarrassment. Clyburn, oh man. He's the fool that actually made the statement one time that it would be a sufficient reward for black folk if We Shall Overcome became the national anthem. I think I have heard few things that objectively stupid and ignorant. So I think that expresses my opinion about those two. I'm going to add one other one for Kamala Harris. Now, I was out in the West Coast for 15 years when I did that show. I was very aware of her then, and professionally, I had a lot of people I had recruited to law school years before that were senior attorneys somewhere or judges. And Camilla had the reputation for being lazy. She never would read anything and would count on wearing a short skirt, grinning at somebody, or flirting to get her over when she was supposed to be relying on information. And my international sources tell me it is an acute embarrassment to the country that she is so abjectly ignorant of facts and circumstances when she speaks to foreign audiences, that she utters what they call word salad. In other words, just nonsense words cut up in no context and thrown into a bowl. Her staff has indicated that even though they put in considerable effort coming up with briefing dossiers for her to look over so she'll know what she's talking about, she's too damn lazy to do so and just talks nonsense off the top of her head that's usually wrong. And I swear to you, if she grins one more damn time, I'm going to throw something at my television set. Speaking of which, that woman Jackson that got confirmed to be Supreme Court Justice, I had the feeling that said, lady, if you scratch your damn head one more time, I'm going to throw something at the television screen. And by the way, what did she become? There's no vacancy. And this guy she's supposed to replace, he has the option to say, I changed my mind. I'm staying. So what is her position? And by the way, now that they've got it, they're going to say, well, we don't want the Republicans to get anybody on the Supreme Court, so there'll be two other people who are in their 80s, and they will probably retire, so let's appoint replacements for them before there's an actual vacancy. Every other time, the Supreme Court has operated with 8 people rather than 9. There's no constitutional requirement as to how many it has to have. So they pull slick stuff on us. But Kamala Harris, Clyburn, I'm trying to be polite.
Yeah, I've heard you rip on him before on Dana's show before, so that's why I kind of want to just end on that note like that, because I've heard you go in on him plenty of times, especially Kamala. I know you're not exactly a huge fan of her or Clyburn.
Well, I met her father, and I met her father sitting at the table with my ex-wife and the Governor General and the Prime Minister of Jamaica. And he got introduced to me as one of their fine Hindu citizens. He said he's all Hindu or Irish. There are no black folk in his family. He says one person that Kamala Harris tries to say is her black great-grandmother was in fact his grandmother, who was in fact a Hindu house servant. So he says there are no recent Africans in this family. We're all either Hindu or Irish. And the reason for that mix is because Jamaica was once part of the British Empire and is now part of the Commonwealth. And there are no passport restrictions on traveling from what used to be Hong Kong or Singapore or Kenya or South Africa or the Bahamas or England or Ireland or Scotland or Australia or New Zealand back and forth amongst the members of the Commonwealth. So you go to Jamaica and you will see, as a friend of mine knows, he's married to a woman who's blonde-haired, blue-eyed. She's part of the English aristocracy, but she was born in Jamaica, and she's a Jamaican citizen, and her 2 parents, who are English aristocrats, were born in Jamaica, and they're blonde. One of them's blonde, and the other one's redhead. And I've run into quite a few Asian Jamaicans who have the patois. Everything gonna be all right, man. Arima. And you want to see all that? Go to St. Elizabeth Parish in Jamaica. See, there are a lot of white people who were born in Jamaica are simply Jamaican citizens. Yeah, man.
Well, on that note, Judge, I definitely appreciate you coming through to this space. You definitely had everybody just eating out the palm of your hand with your great knowledge and the wealth of information that you shared with us. I would definitely be reaching out for you in the future whenever you're not busy to try to see if we can get you on another space in here, because they were so eagerly anticipating you just coming in here, and it just made everybody's night, everybody's day. And I was extremely happy that I was able to connect with you. Like I said, you've been a big role model for black men for 30 some odd years, and we appreciate you, and we definitely love you, and we love the honesty and the truthfulness in you. So like I said, I'd definitely be reaching out to you whenever. I know you're a very busy man, but whenever you have some time to spare, I would definitely like to have you again on here in another Twitter space, and I would definitely have we'll definitely have more topics and stuff that we can cover, because Newstoter has an enormous amount of black content that, I mean, we could go days with speaking about. So again, I'm glad to have you in here, and as well as everybody else, they're glad to have you up in here. And if you guys are not, make sure you're following Judge Joe on Twitter. Also, make sure that you his barbecue, anything. I'm gonna go ahead and try to get a link from you. I'm gonna DM you maybe tomorrow and see if I can go ahead and post your links to any of your merchandise and go ahead and tweet it out for my followers. And like I said, we definitely support you, and we definitely want to see you become the next mayor of Memphis as well. So again, great. I thank you for coming out. I mean, this was a humbling experience for me tonight. We're a growing black platform. And like I said, I was just glad to have you here. Black-owned, black business, and it's great to see a black man who's achieved success on every level imaginable. And that's an inspiration for me and a lot of the black men that's in this space here tonight. So I appreciate you, and I definitely love everything that you stand for. And once again, I would definitely be reaching out to you. And for any of you guys, got your hand up because we about to get ready to close it out.
Yeah, I just posted JudgeJoesBrown.com up in the chat, so you just give everybody maybe 60 more seconds to look at it total, so that way they go ahead, hit the judge up at his .com, and get some of that barbecue sauce, because Memorial Day weekend is this weekend, so we're gonna be cooking down buying sauce, so we about to buy from our black brother. You know what I mean? Don't buy from the store. You know what I mean?
Definitely support black business. And thank you once again, Judge Joe. And that will conclude our Twitter space for the night. I'm your host, the curator. This is Newstoter, and I appreciate everybody who came through tonight. God bless, and you guys have a good one.
All right, young folks. Have a great evening. Have a great holiday coming up. Be safe, be sound, and prosper. All right, I'm out of here. I've got the quote. This has been Judge Joe.
Judge Joe. That's
Appreciate you, Judge. Appreciate it.